With the second DLC for Remnant 2 releasing, we've got a good amount of new equipment to create builds with. This video here is to show you exactly how to recreate some of the best builds I've used so far using the new equipment. I'll show off a full template with everything available for you to see and then explain the idea along with the trinkets used. We've got Invoker builds, Monolith builds, mod builds, and a couple others. Feel free to modify things to your liking, but the templates should hold up pretty well either way. So let's check out the top 10 best DLC builds I've used in Remnant 2. The first build up I like to call the King. This makes use of as many new items as possible for a solid build overall. We've got Invoker and Archon for high skill and mod damage, then rocking the sick Red Prince drip because the name fits. It all revolves around the Magnifying Glass Amulet, which increases mod and skill size plus duration. Pair this up with the Amplitude trait and you get Firestorm and Sand Tornado to cover anything no matter where you shoot it, also making your two skills last a long time. For rings, I recommend Token of Favor for extra crit, Probability Cord for extra crit damage, Braided Thorns for the extra crit chance, and Burden of the Gambler for more crit damage and chance. This build is just fun as heck and makes Apocalypse really easy other than seeing what you're actually shooting. Be sure to have the Kinship trait to survive Firestorm and you should be good to go. Next up, we've got Mod God, which makes use of a new style of mod spam. Instead of high regen, we get high chance to not consume a mod charge, running with Archon for the mod's damage and Summoner as it gets explosive and mod damage buffs. Completely ignore the summons if you like, as they're not a main focus here. Using the new Read Avant amulet, you get more mod generation and 20% chance to not consume a mod charge. Pair this up with the failsafe mutator on Corrupted Meridian, and it's possible to shoot 5 or 6 cluster bombs in a row for ridiculous damage. The rings are very similar to the last, going for high crit chance. Burden of the Gambler for overall crit utility, Probability Cord for the crit damage, Braided Thorns for that crit chance, and lastly Token of Favor, so the mod on Monolith gives you a huge damage boost overall. Just spam out Sandstorms as much as you can and then swap to Corrupted Meridian to hope it doesn't consume mods several times over. The damage on this one can get really out of hand fast, and since we have on Siphoner and Leech, you're infinitely going to heal yourself without taking a relic. For the Splooder build, we want to try and make use of Summoner's minion executions since they are now viable for the first time ever. Invoker as Prime is obvious for the skill cooldowns and charges. Then we use the Reaver on Summoner as his death by your hand grants really high explosive damage. Amplitude is going to be necessary here once again for that Reaver to hit correctly. Jester's Bell for the amulet increases mod and skill casting speed, which makes things feel smoother to use. For rings, we've got Burden of the Gambler for that crit bonus, Burden of the Rebel for some extra skill cooldown, and the negative doesn't matter as we don't need to consume relics ever. Token of Favor is an easy boost to damage since we yet again have on Monolith, and Black Pawn Stamp grants a bit more cooldown for your skills. You can go a bit more cooldown if necessary, but you should be fine if you use this correctly by alternating between skills and not just spamming the summons alone. The Splusions from your summons not only deal massive damage, but can repeatedly stagger the toughest bosses while healing you and be used infinitely. Very fun method, as Summoner was never able to be used correctly like this until now. For the Western Classic, we have yet another Invoker build, but this time with Gunslinger. The idea is to spam the Quick Draw skill as it always hits crit and gets really high numbers on weak spots. You can also take off the last ring and replace it with a different cooldown option if the health drain is too much for you. Silver Ribbon is the amulet granting more skill damage overall. We've got Burden of the Rebel for skill cooldown, Probability Cord to increase that guaranteed crit, Burden of the Destroyer for a good damage boost overall, the Burden of the Stargazer for some more skill cooldown. While this build does work on any boss, it's more successful when weak spots are available, as the damage is almost doubled when you can hold the Quick Draw skill to get an aimed shot for much higher damage. Flashcaster is a must-have for your trait, but it's pretty easy to play with a couple other traits as you get the red gun back so quickly. The Gloom of Thunder is Havoc form at its highest potential, trying to get as much damage out of both casts as you can, which honestly could be the best build in the game currently. The time to kill is absurd regardless of affixes. Be sure to use Invoker's second skill this time for more elemental damage. Jester Bell apparently increases your damage casting when in Havoc form, so that's a nice buff for damage. Braided Thorns is for the crit chance, Token of Favor is for the crit chance, Burden of the Gambler is for the crit, and Probability Cord is for the crit damage. This is very similar to the King build we started with, but focused purely on buffing Havoc form instead of mods as well. Just use both your mods to start the battle, pop the Invoker skill for more damage and lifesteal, and go to town with Havoc. Bosses should melt very quickly. Probably a lot faster than they should, really. Oh, and you also gotta wear the bandit mask, since this is gonna be a massacre when you use it. One cool new build you can make is the Immortal Spaceman. Essentially, this uses a new relic that makes you immune to damage for 3 seconds. And, well, we just spam it infinitely, as the engineer turret kills bosses for us. Surprisingly, it really doesn't take that long to win. Obviously, the empathy affix is going to completely break this build entirely, but it's doable in all other situations. Engineer Prime is for the overclock damage on the Vulcan turret. Then you want Way of the Keula skill for the Invoker, since it does damage in a wide area. We rock the Emergency Switch Amulet to reduce our chances of using a relic. Paired with the Conservation Seal, we have a 100% chance to not use a relic when below 50% health. Restriction Cord keeps us below 50%, so you can eat over 1 billion relics and never run out. Burden of the Destroyer will increase damage for you, and Burden of the Silenced will also increase damage for the turret and skill. Using the new relic makes you completely immune to damage, but only for about 3 seconds. Just keep taking it over and over, as this will not only make you immune, but keep both of your skills active no matter what, as using relics regens both abilities. And yeah, it's a bit dumb, but really funny, and embarrassing certain bosses like this could be your dream come true. Life Taker is my take on the new Leaking Gemstone ring, allowing Nightfall to keep its mod active almost 100% of the time. Hunter's focus on the Hunter class will give you way more damage and help with Nightfall's brutal recoil. You also want Gunslinger for Bullet Storm and the extra reload speed. Make sure you select the new Chakra trait to keep Nightfall's mod active as long as possible. We have the Full Moon Circlet for more lifesteal and a big damage boost. Leaking Gemstone lets you regen mod energy while a mod is active, which is how we keep the mod active almost infinitely. Spirit Stone increases mod regen by 10%, so your shots are more worth it. Cataloger's Jewel generates 10 mod power per second, which helps regen mods when bosses transition and you can't actually deal damage anymore. Offering Stone is a steep damage boost, as we'll be firing away quickly. You're not going to be able to take any hit in the game with this, but the setup gives you enough leeway to at least take some damage here and there without going down in a second. And you want to have Nightfall's mod up as much as possible, since you get infinite ammo and way faster fire rate with better lifesteal. It's a really fun way to use the gun, as it fires so quickly. I was pretty surprised by the damage, actually. Major Laser attempts to use the new Monolith gun as an actual gun instead of just the mod. Now be aware, this is a setup only for weak spots. It deals considerably less damage when those are not available. But for ad clear, the mod on Monolith can help you deal with stuff while the laser focuses down elites. Zero Divide as your amulet grants infinite ammo reserves, which is extremely nice to have, plus a boost to damage. Token of Favor will be activated by Monolith as it applies exposed on shots. Xania's Malice is a good weak spot buff that is activated easily. Floodlit Diamond increases weak spot damage by 24% with this gun, which is pretty huge, and the Ring of Flawed Beauty is a 25% weak spot bonus as well. What's cool is Monolith has zero recoil already built into it, making it much easier to actually aim on those weak spots while letting us not use the Hunter's Focus skill if we don't want to. As long as you equip the 1000 Cuts mutator, you have a quick reload and can melt down weak spots with ease. Plasma Cutter still deals more weak spot damage overall, but this is very user-friendly for a weak spot build, and it performs well for the bosses weak spots are built into. Beastmaster tries to make use of the new Soul Stone amulet for a nice summoner build. We want to have as many summons on the field as possible and keep them alive rather than exploding them. The Handler class grants you the dog, of course, as well as skill and range damage bonuses, letting you use your guns pretty well if you need to. You also get that free revive, which, let's be honest, is super helpful. Flyers on Summoner are then going to be your next best summons, in my opinion, as they already move pretty quick. Soul Stone increases summon damage and movement speed by 30%, making them much more effective. Soul Guard grants us 5 total bulwark stacks, as the dog, 2 flyers, and both our mods are going to proc this for max stacks of good defense. Soul Shard grants you a 15% boost to all damage, helping work in that skill and range damage yet again. Soul Link is incredible when paired up with the familiar mod, as it's very aggressive at stealing back your health. And then you have an open slot, but I chose the Leaking Gemstone. My idea was to keep the bird mod active 100% of the time, since it is your best item. Well, it doesn't always work to give it back fully, but if you shoot and the summons get in damage, it will work. Be sure to have trait points opened up so you can buff the summon's defense. And I really wanted to make use of the new crossbow here, as it is a DLC item. Honestly, it isn't really all that great, being kind of slow to fire, but we are focused on summons anyway. The damage is good, your defense is enough to take many different hits in combat, and the free revive can save you since we don't really use Handler all that often. The final build, called Mod Monster, tries to make use of the new Flying Bomb Trap mod, which it's really fun and powerful, so I highly recommend this build over honestly most of them. It's just more fun than a lot of stuff I've used. Archon and Summoner once again are the best buffs here for max mod damage boost. Do make sure to throw on the Bandit Mutator for Corrupted Arbalist, as it makes the gun feel amazing against every enemy. Detonation Trigger gives you a good boost to both mods' damage. Blasting Cap Ring boosts both mods' damage as well. Singed Ring will further increase damage as we're wearing the Detonation Trigger. Burden of the Gambler works since neither of our mods weak spot anyway, and Burden of Destroyer is always a powerful boost overall. Neither of these mods can be spammed as both are duration based. The Bomb Trap actually regens instantly, but throwing out another one takes the previous away. So the idea is to place down a trap and then wait for it to run out and then place down another. You then switch to your primary, activating its mod to have bouncing explosions while the trap does its job. Be sure to have Kinship on, as the primary mod will damage you. But yeah, both of these deal really solid damage, and they work a bit differently than almost any other mod build, which is pretty fun to use overall. And there you have the 10 best builds I've been using since the new DLC. All of these can be modified a few different ways if you're looking to make it your own in some way. However, each build shows you all the info you need to recreate every single setup if that's what you're looking for. No, there's no Thorn build here, as it is a cool gun, but it's not working correctly at the time. I did get in a lot of other new items, so try out as many of these as you can. I did test them for being really fun and honestly just good damage against Apocalypse bosses. Hopefully you enjoyed this little presentation, and do like the video if you found it helpful. Let me know what your favorite build is currently, and I'll catch you next time.